This week we just celebrated the holiday of shabbos, and this Shabbos read the parasha of Naso, which means to be elevated. Naso means to be elevated, and the role of the tzaddik of each generation is to elevate his generation, to make them not just in the language of the Rebbe, not just that their feet should go faster and their hands should move quicker and they should do the right thing, but they should be elevated and uplifted. And that's actually one of the reasons that the Rebbe said we should share stories of tzaddikim, because sharing stories of tzaddikim, it lifts you up. There's actually a letter of the Rebbe to the previous Rebbe, in which the Rebbe writes that he heard the previous Rebbe, not the previous Rebbe necessarily himself, but that there's an expression in Chabad that Chabad is not into miracles. And the Rebbe wrote a letter to his father-in-law asking what's the reason why Chabad is not into miracles. It would seem, the Rebbe says, that maybe in earlier times in history when people were pagan and they were worshiping all kinds of idols, they believed in spirituality, so miracles don't say much because they believe in a higher power anyways. But later in history, the Rebbe said, when people started to focus more on science, started to believe in the only things they could see with their eyes. So a miracle certainly demonstrates something higher than what we're used to. And how much more so in our time, when people are so preoccupied with just things they could touch with their hands, they don't believe in anything higher. A miracle, the Rebbe said, witnessing a miracle can lift a person out of a deep pit and bring them to great heights. And therefore, it's really important to share stories of miracles. Let's share something happened today in the synagogue. A few months ago, one lady asked me if she found in a garage sale, a friend of hers, a non-Jewish friend, found this ketubah, marriage document, and she asked her friend, I saw this Jewish document. I saw this Jewish document in this garage sale, so maybe you know what it's for. It's a wedding document. It's a good thing. Maybe you know how to return it to its owners. It's interesting, in Jewish law, there's certain documents you're not supposed to return. Like if you find a bill of divorce, you're not supposed to return it because maybe the husband initiated it, but he stopped it. But a wedding document you're supposed to return. So she said, what should I do? She asked me, what should I do with the wedding document? So I told her, put it on Facebook, put it on social media, send it to me, and send the picture, and maybe you'll find the owner. So she does that. Crazy thing. She calls up this guy, and she tells him what she found. He can't believe it. He says, let me get my ex-wife on the phone. He gets his ex-wife on the phone. And basically, this couple was on the brink of divorce, but they were thinking about getting back together, and they're waiting for a sign. And this, discovering this ketubah in this garage sale that reached back to them through so many series of divine providence, really was what they needed to open their hearts to each other to begin the relationship again. So that actually set this in motion. They were trying to figure out how the ketubah ended up in the garage sale, and a whole, but Hashem orchestrated everything just to bring this couple back together. So that was story number one. A few more stories I want to share with you. Another story, Rabbi Yom Klein, the Rebbe's secretary, was I had the privilege of meeting him many times and speaking to him. He was very, very quiet. He never shared too many things that happened between him and the Rebbe, but there is a book of stories that where he shares personal stories that happened with him, incredible things. I'll share a few of them tonight. He said that he first entered the working in the Rebbe's secretariat. Rabbi Charakov told him, to see things that are private, I can't stop you because you're going to see things that are not private, but not everything you see has to be shared. So he was very careful not to share, and so what he did share is something that we could learn a lot from. So here are a few stories he shared. Number one, there was a businessman who was really down in his luck. He lost all his money, and he hadn't been to the Rebbe before. But friends of his suggested to him, why don't you go see the Rebbe and see if the Rebbe could advise you. He comes to the Rebbe for private audience. It was still in the times when the Rebbe was doing private audiences. And the Rebbe said to him, go speak to your uncle. Now, the Rebbe never met this guy before. He never met this uncle before. And he's thinking, like, why should I go to my uncle? Like, what is that? My uncle is not particularly close with me. And he's not particularly affluent as far as he knew. But when he left the Rebbe's room, he told his friend what happened. His friend said, just go to your uncle. Just see what happens. He told his uncle what happened. His uncle said, I'm going to lend you what you need to get on your feet. And at that time, he needed $50,000, which was a lot of money at that time, for him especially. And that actually set him back on his feet. He was able to begin his business again. Because of that, because he listened to the Rebbe's advice. Rabbi Klein said that he once hosted this OBGYN in his home. And this OBGYN tells Rabbi Klein that the Rebbe must have a medical board that he consults with, because how else would he be able to answer all the questions that comes his way? So Rabbi Klein said, I actually could tell you a story that happened this week, and it's connected to you. He tells him like this. He said, last Friday, this woman called the Rebbe's office for the following reason. She was pregnant, she was about to give birth, and she was having a hard time delivering the baby. And the doctors, she asked you what to do, and you said that she should do an immediate cesarean. They should right away stop trying to have a natural birth and do immediate cesarean. So it was a few hours before Shabbos. So she called the Rebbe's office, and she asked the Rebbe's office, what should we do? And the Rebbe responded, wait till after Shabbos. That's what Rebbe Klein told this doctor. The Rebbe told this to me. And after, Baruch Hashem, over Shabbos, the baby was born in a healthy way. Rebbe Klein said to this doctor, you know that when I went into the Rebbe's room on that Friday morning, I could tell you there was no medical board. You just said immediately what to do, and you could see with your patient, you know that she had a healthy baby. So the doctor said, so how does it work? And Rebbe Klein said, because he's a Rebbe. There was a certain Rosh Yeshiva, he was head of a yeshiva, and he came on a fundraising trip to America to raise some funds for his yeshiva. He was very unsuccessful. He went to many cities, but he didn't really know what to do. He didn't really know how to do what he was doing. He had to raise money for his yeshiva, but it wasn't working. So one of his friends, a Chabad chassid, said to him, you should consult with the Rebbe. Before going back to Israel, you spend all this time. Well, just ask the Rebbe what you should do. Just consult with the Rebbe. So, okay, why not? He goes into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe says to him, go to Toronto. He'd already been to Toronto, and he hadn't had any success. He's like wondering, why should he go to Toronto? What's the point of going to Toronto? And he met his Chabad friend after he'd been to the Rebbe. He tells him, the Rebbe said I should go to Toronto. I didn't even have the money for a ticket to go to Toronto, let alone to think of being successful and fundraising in Toronto. I didn't even have a ticket. So this Chabad man says, I will pay for the change in your flight itinerary, but listen, if the Rebbe gave you this advice, you should take the advice. Okay? He goes to Toronto. On the plane, he's sitting next to a man, and they start talking. He tells the man why he's there, why he's going to Toronto. And the man says, you know what? I work in an insurance company, and the owner of the company is a Jew. He's not really into charity, but I'll speak to him, and maybe he'll be interested in helping you. All right. And he sets up an interview with a meeting with this insurance company owner, and they start talking, and he says, so how much do you need? What's the shortfall of your yeshiva? He said, $22,000. He said, okay. He writes down immediately a check of $22,000, exactly what the shortfall is. And the head of the yeshiva was like, we only spoke for 5 minutes. Like, you can't tell me in this 5-minute conversation, you suddenly have a reason to give me $22,000. So this businessman said the following. He says, I'll tell you what happened. last night I had a dream of my father. My father comes to me in a dream and he says, if you want to do something special for me, give charity. So I promised my father in the dream that I would do this. And today you came to me, you spoke to me about giving charity, and you said you're missing $22,000. Today is the 22nd yard site of my father. It's been 22 years since my father passed away. So I immediately realized the connection between these two things, and that's why I'm giving you this check. That's story number 4. Okay, here's story number 5, our feature story for tonight. I love this story, not because it's so miraculous, but because the author really puts her heart into saying the story, her personal life story. And you could see the chen, you could see the charm of a Chabad chassid and the uplifting experience of being connected to the Rebbe. So here's the story. This story is printed in the recent Kfar Chabad, and she says like this. She said, I was a good girl when I was little. I studied in the Beit Yaakov Yeshiva in Akko. I was very religious, kept all the mitzvot, but I merited that the Rebbe reached out to me and connected me to him. She said that on a regular day in this school in Akko, a substitute teacher came to the class. Her name was Rachel Schwartz. Later she became Rachel Kupchik. She married one of the Kupchiks. And she started telling the class about the Rebbe. And she told the class about the talk of the Rebbe. And she doesn't know why this Malka Kubitschek, the author of the story or biography, doesn't know why, but somehow what this Rachel Schwartz said just enveloped her and gave light to her heart. And she considers that day of Parshas Vayetze, when this substitute teacher came to the class to share with the class about the Rebbe and this talk of the Rebbe and how it touched her, she considers that her Hasidic birthday. So Rachel told the class, you should all go to the Chabad Center and learn chassidus. At that time, Rabbi Orchman opened up a Chabad Center, and she was really touched by this substitute teacher, and she came and she brought her friends to this Chabad Center, and she felt that she found her soul, her good fortune, the light of my life. One night, Rabbi Orchman suggested that we go to Haifa to participate in a farbrengen with Reuven Dunin, the noted chassid, and she said it was so enlightening, we swallowed every word that he said. And Rabbi Orchman suggested to her, to this girl, that she open up a Army of Hashem club. The Rebbe began the largest Jewish children's organization in the world, the Army of Hashem. And Rabbi Orchman said, as part of his activities in the city, he suggested to her, why don't you open up a club, a Army of Hashem club in Akko? So she agreed to do this, and she got a letter from the Rebbe. She was a little girl. She got a letter from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, the letter is, to the women and girls of Chabad in Akko. She asked the rabbi, who are the women? There's no one at all of Chabad in Akko. Who is this letter to? So Rabbi Orchman says, the Rebbe sees the future. The Rebbe sees where it's going to be. Anyways, when she was so close to Rabbi Orchman, that when Rabbi Orchman went out of town to fundraise or whatever, she was the one who opened the Chabad house every day. She was the one who would sell the tefillin and the mezuzot. She was really so smitten by her work in Chabad, and as a present, Rabbi Orchman gave her her first chitas, Chumash Tilman Tanya, and a set of the Alter Rebbe's Code of Jewish Law. And every Friday, she would go to visit a hospital with other girls in Nahariya to encourage everyone to light Shabbos. Make it a little bit lower. And there was no Chabad center yet in Nahariya, and her parents were very supportive, and they bought her a ticket to visit the Rebbe. So she came to the Rebbe the first time in Tishrei in 1983. The Rebbe had a audience for the visitors, for the guests, and it happened to be on her birthday, the 25th day of Tishrei, when she visited the Rebbe, and it was very, very special to her. Anyways, at that time, she when she was in 11th grade, she had the following issue. The issue was that the school made a new policy. Today in Bais Yaakov, it's very common, in most Bais Yaakovs in the world, that there is no television allowed for any student in their home. If you have a television, you're not welcome in the class. But she didn't know what to do because her parents had a television. And they came out with this new policy: no television allowed for any of our students in their homes. If you have a television, you're not welcome in our school. So she's a very honest person. I'm sure the school wouldn't even know that they had a television in their home. That is a little black and white television, in those years, in the 80s, and it wasn't anything to speak of. But she was an honest and wholehearted person. She felt like what should she do? And that time, Rabbi Shlomo Frank was encouraging her. She should go to Chabad yeshiva. She should switch schools, one from the Chabad, go from the Bais Yaakov high school to the Chabad high school. But really, this was really a good place for her at the time. She actually felt, in the Bais Yaakov that she is doing a mission for the Rebbe and what she was doing, encouraging her friends to spread the Torah and going to light Shabbos candles. She didn't know what to do. So she wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe answered the following: Tipasik al televizia, stop the television and stay where you are right now. Stop the television. What does that sound like, stop the television? I mean, it's not her house, right? It's her parents' television. So she accepted the responsibility to get rid of the television in her home. So she went and she cut the wires of the television somehow, and the television no longer worked. And so her father came to the next look in the television and I guess doesn't work. So that was it. The father never replaced television. He never asked about it. Just television. They said stop television and stay there. And so she stopped the television, made it not work anymore, and she was able to stay where she was in Bais Yaakov. And she saw how the Rebbe's words were realized in the most amazing way. The television stopped, and she's able to stay in the Bais Yaakov. So she ended up getting married, Baruch Hashem, to her husband, Rabbi Yossi Schechter, and they opened up a Chabad center in Australia. Before they went to Australia, the Rebbe had the day that they were leaving, on the third day of Tishrei, the Rebbe had an audience for philanthropists who were donating to the Chabad development fund, Machzor development fund. Rabbi Groner said, "You're going to Australia today. You should go to the Rebbe and see the Rebbe before you leave." So her husband and her went in front of the Rebbe. Rabbi Groner says, "These are the new shluchim going down to Australia." The Rebbe looked at them and said, "Fort Gesundheit, should travel with good health." And the Rebbe gave her, "Fort Gesundheit, go with good health. You'll have great success." And the Rebbe gave them $2 in his, and they were very excited, and they, Baruch Hashem, traveled to Melbourne, and very quickly they started activities for Hanukkah, for Purim, for Rosh Hashanah, for everything, and they asked for a bracha for children. And the Rebbe responded, "I got your report, and days of Hanukkah that give light, with blessing and success and good news and success and all the above, all the matters." In Sivan, in 1987, she traveled to Israel to participate in the wedding of her sister, and on the way to Israel, she stopped off in New York, and she wasn't sure what she should do vis-a-vis celebrating Shavuos, because the Rebbe said that Shavuos is supposed to be, each person is supposed to count 49 days personally to celebrate the 50th day, which is Shavuos. And since she has crossed the date line, so therefore she has one day less. So should she count Shavuos, should she celebrate Shavuos a day earlier or a day later? How does it work? So I told her to consult a rabbi who paskins halacha, Rav Meir, a rabbi who was actually a posek. She asked Rabbi Marlowe to do it. Rabbi Marlowe said you should celebrate Shavuos one day earlier because you're coming from Australia and you passed the date line. So because you have an extra day, you celebrate Shavuos a day earlier. So on the night of her Shavuos, which was the day before everyone else's Shavuos, she stood outside 770, and Rebbe noticed her, and Rebbe waved to her like a good yontiv wave. And she said how special it was that the Rebbe remembered her and her situation, and she's alone, she's celebrating a holiday different than everybody else. Rebbe noticed her and gave her a blessing for her personal Shavuos. Today, Baruch Hashem, after the Australian market crash, they had a difficult time staying in Australia, and they asked the Rebbe to do. The Rebbe said to ask Rabbi Groner and to ask a posek in Australia. They asked Rabbi Groner. Rabbi Groner said that they should go back to Israel. Today, Baruch Hashem, they're very active in Kiryat Shmuel, together with their children, as Rebbe's blessing, and in spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit in Israel. So I'm just sharing the different details in our life, not so much the details, but just the general feeling that she conveys in this article. I wanted to read the original to get the real feeling, but that just the Nisiyas Reish, the connection with the Rebbe gives you this elevation, gives you this it lifts you up. And as we're entering now the week of Bahaloscha, I'll just conclude with one personal thing. Right before Shabbos, I wrote a letter to the Rebbe. I opened Rebbe's letters. The Rebbe said, in answer to your letter from Friday, the Friday before Parshas Naso, the answer for your letter comes from the beginning of Parshas Baloscha, when the Torah says to light the candles until the candles shine on their own. So the great blessing that things should be that way, that your neshama should shine, and you should be elevated physically and spiritually. So Hashem should help us all that our candles should shine on their own, and we should celebrate in Yerushalayim tonight, the third Bais Hamikdash, and see Aron HaKohen light the menorah and shine. L'chaim l'chaim v'racha. A good tavach, a freilich